be in the conversation.
What's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it is Guard E3. And normally this is the part where I'd introduce Mo, but my man's still on vacation. It is absolutely well deserved. So let's talk some basketball. We'll just jump right to it. And I wanted to start off like we always do. Let's talk about some underrated players of the week. And that's one of my favorite things to do for anybody just tuning in. Welcome. And we always start out, we like to talk about players that were underrated for their time because we think there are too many players that were absolutely lost within the span of history. And I saw somebody doubting. So John Wall actually is the one I want to talk about today because he's my underrated player of the week. And the reason I went with John Wall, really simple. I think a lot of people are starting to forget how good peak John Wall really was. He went on a podcast and said, at my peak, I was the second best player in the East, right behind LeBron. And while I don't think that's true, I think, in the East, you could have argued Paul George and other guys like of that caliber ahead of him. We're talking about a 20-10 guy, all NBA defense, quite a few years first team. And while you're looking at a guy who's carrying such a heavy load on offense, I think that, is absolutely terrific. And this is a guy, let's be real, he didn't really get that much help in his prime. Like, Bradley Beal, by the time he started to develop and get past his the bulk of his injury proneness in Washington, John Wall started to get injury prone. So you could argue outside of Bradley Beal, his next best player he's ever had was the Polish Hammer in Marcin Gortat. Shout out to the living legend. I think that people are forgetting that when John Wall, especially in that 2016-17 season, that last year he was healthy, was absolute cinema. So if you see that clip, don't doubt him because that man, John Wall, was an absolute problem. And like I said, I hope you don't get lost in time. I think that man was very, very phenomenal, and he's starting to get a little underrated. But you know what? The first thing I wanted to hop into today is let's talk about, we're going to kind of link up our segment. It's called Puppy Prospects, right? And it's like talking about some of the young up-and-comers in the league. And I wanted to just link this with Summer League because I think there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about with Summer League, right? So why don't we start with the good? Some of the most impressive players that I've seen so far in Summer League. And there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. I think the first where I'm going to start, though, Houston Rockets, they got an absolute gem, man. Reed Shepherd? This dude's like 49% from three so far on the Summer League. And he's shown that he can hit off the dribble. He can come around screens. This man can drill threes in any direction, off any action, and any length. Of course, he's got things to work on. He's not necessarily going to create for himself. He's more so going to be running screens and playing off of other guys. But this guy, he's an absolutely lethal three-ball shooter. And he's able to score inside the arc as well. So I think they got an absolute steal with that pick. But I think the biggest surprise outside of Reed Shepherd is Julian Strawther. Now, listen, that wasn't a name that was on a lot of people's bucket list going into Summer League. A lot of people were focused on Sarr and Bronny, and heard that Brandon Miller, who's also doing very well, was coming back for round 2. And I heard more people talking about why Scoot Henderson isn't at Summer League more than people talking about Julian Strawther. But give him all the credit in the world. This man came into Summer League, and he's currently at 28 a game on 40% three-point shooting. And to me, that is absolutely phenomenal. You're talking about a potential rotation piece, and he's going to need to be one this year. They were counting on Deron Holmes, but unfortunately, his ACL went before we could actually get some minutes. So that's a lot of Zeke Nnaji, and so I'm loving that Julian Strawther's balling out in summer league. He absolutely has shown a lot of development between last year and this year, and he's showing that. And I'm excited to see where he ends up next. Like, what kind of a role does he play for the Denver Nuggets? And I think it's going to be quite the big one this year. And of course, with the good from summer league, there's the bad. And I think the most disappointing prospect so far of summer league, and no, it's not Bronny. It is absolutely, it's got to be Alexander Sarr, right? This man is shooting 19% from the field. He hasn't shown an ability to create much of anything by himself. And Sarr was a funny one, right? Because coming into the draft, this is a guy that didn't work out for Atlanta. He didn't apparently wanted nothing to do go into Atlanta. However, now we're watching Sarr play in summer league, and he could have benefited greatly going to Atlanta because we can say what we want about Trae Young, but he is one of the top offensive engines in the league, and he would have made life so much easier for Sarr. He wouldn't have had to create much. Could have just focused on defense, and they could have eased him into an offensive role and slowly brought him along. Well, now he doesn't have that. His the number one option on that Wizards team is arguably going to be him, Kyle Kuzma, or Jordan Poole. I doubt it's going to be Jordan Poole after that horrific showing last year. And if Kyle Kuzma is your number one, that's not taking much pressure off you. So I think it's unfortunate for Sarr that, he decided to avoid working out with the Hawks. Because at the end of the day, now it's looking like a bad mistake, right? You're putting him in a situation where they're going to ask him to try to create some of his own offense to bring him along. And there's a lot of risk in doing that on a young, rebuilding team in which you can develop a lot of bad habits. And now that's kind of what I'm starting to get worried about that's going to happen with Sarr. You're going to put him on the Wizards, free reign to do whatever he wants, and he's going to start developing some bad habits. And I'm not sure how sold I am on the Washington Wizards development staff. I would say that him and Denny would be a nice duo of the future. Like, he could be a key piece, but they just shipped Denny off to Portland. So I think the Washington Wizards, at the end of the day, are going to be interesting. I think they're absolutely going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstake. This team's going to be terrible once again. But yeah, it's just really unfortunate that now Sarr, which I'm not sitting here playing a pity party for Sarr because he did this to himself. He's the one who refused to work out for Atlanta. So this is all on him. Well, at the end of the day, let's just hope that he thrives. He has the best career he possibly can, and he just doesn't develop a ton of bad habits that by the time he maybe does get the chance to go to a new team, it's not too late. Like, I don't want to see that for him. Say, yeah. But those are some of the guys I just wanted to mention in summer league. Him and one more guy on the good side. I think what I want the Milwaukee Bucks to do from now on is just follow the Miami Heat coaching staff and just figure out who they're watching because they always hit it out of the park. And once again, Khalil Ware is looking like an absolute monster, 2010 guy. He's been an absolute summer league stud. And he's already shown that he's got range on his jumper. He can shoot the three ball. Now, the issue with Ware that I see a lot with him is he hesitates. When he hesitates, that's really where his bad misses are. So if they can bring him in and kind of just drill him to catch it, shoot it, full confidence without really hesitating, well then I don't really see. I think that's going to be an absolutely 10 out of 10 pick, and I think The Miami Heat would benefit a ton from playing Ware next to Bam. Make sure you keep a rim protector on the floor at all times. That would be absolutely perfect for Miami. Now, moving on from this batch of rookies to another. Because unfortunately, I don't want this to sound like I'm talking down on the WNBA Rookie of the Year race, but I feel like it's going to sound like it, but let's cook. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we just had Shaq, we just had Dawn Staley, both come out, and they said it. They're like, yeah, you know what? I think that Angel Reese is the Rookie of the Year. And I'm here to say absolutely not. Now, listen, I actually like Angel Reese. I'm a big Angel Reese fan. When I decided to get into the WNBA, the team I picked to follow was Chicago. So I'm not going to sit here crapping on Angel Reese too much, but you just can't make a good argument right now that she's the Rookie of the Year. There is zero good argument for that. What, you want to go by stats? Okay. Caitlin Clark dominates that. You want to go by eye test? Okay, guess what? Caitlin Clark also dominates that. It's not close. Offensively, Caitlin Clark is leagues ahead of Angel Reese. And it's not like there's this massive gap on defense either that bridges that. So I really just do not understand, right? So maybe somebody can help me understand. What is the legitimate argument for Angel Reese over Caitlin Clark besides people just do not want Caitlin Clark to win? Because that is the only good argument that, or the only reason that I'm seeing for people picking Angel Reese. Because at this point, especially, you just watched her set the WNBA assist record with 19, almost at a 2020 game. She's about to potentially set the assist record in just for the entire WNBA in general. She might lead all the rookies in blocks. The only one above her is Cameron Brink, and Brink's done for the year. So, once again, I'm not going to sit here crapping on Angel Reese. I think she has stuff to work on. I think she's just got to work on her touch. That's just got to happen if she wants to become a more polished offensive player. And I think the Andre Drummond comparisons, when they say she's like a female Andre Drummond, are accurate, which people that sit there and say that's a terrible thing, it really isn't. Like, let's be real. Andre Drummond was a multi-time All-Star who's made a lot of money in his career and was a serviceable role player for a lot of different teams. That's not a bad thing. And the funny part is, Angel Reese has a motor and like the drive that a lot of players don't have. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, motor, hustle, and heart don't close the gap between what actually happens on the basketball court and who's more impactful. So, like I said, maybe somebody can help me in the comments, but the answer to this Rookie of the Year race, and I know what the comeback is. Well, Shaq played in the NBA, and Dawn Staley has more experience coaching than you. You probably haven't played since high school. And, yeah, I get that. They do have a little more experience with basketball than me, but once again, at the end of the day, there's just no good argument for Angel Reese, and it doesn't make sense. And I too also wanted to dip back into the NBA real quick and talk about my Bucks rookies, and I think they've been absolutely phenomenal as well. AJ Johnson, man, when I first saw that man, I thought he was possibly a reach. I was unsure. He looked small. He only played 8 minutes in the Australian League. I wasn't really sold, but watching him in Summer League, and it's been tough watching the Bucks in Summer League. They have not been good at all. It was fun to watch the first game, but man, he is like the one bright spot in that entire team. He's got speed that you just can't teach. He's got touch that you just can't teach, and he's a very good playmaker. He's got things to work on for sure. However, I think that we may have actually nailed that pick. I think it's very possible that he develops and he develops very well. He plays in a similar vein that you saw from like a young, really young, like raw Tyrese Maxey or a really raw and young De'Aaron Fox. Now, I'm not saying he's ever going to be as good as those two. I'm not trying to sit here and say that's a ceiling. He very well could, but his game right now just reminds me of watching them when they were really, really young. So overall, I'm happy with that. I know he's not going to get minutes. Tyler Smith though too. We a lot of Bucks fans have been clamoring for a Bobby Portis replacement, and I think he could be that guy. Good stretch four, can probably dabble a little bit at the five. Not necessarily the best rim protector, but that's all right. I think he's going to be perfect next to Giannis, though. His game reminds me a lot of Channing Frye. There's a lot of limitations to what you can do with him defensively, but offensively, I think he's going to end up being a great floor spacing big and just a great offensive player in general. So I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, also when it comes to the Bucks, great news. I absolutely love to see it. We have signed Gary Trent on a vet minimum deal, which, by the way, it's going to be an absolute steal. This is a guy who I thought was going to be way out of our price range. I thought he was going to go for at least somewhere between 10 mil a year, maybe even 15. So I didn't think we had a chance at him. Gary Trent Jr. was the second most accurate shooter on wide open 3-point shots, only behind one Mr. Steph Curry. He's at 51% on wide open threes. So now you're going to put him into an offense with Giannis, with Chris Middleton, and with Damian Lillard. This man's going to feast on wide open threes. And the thing with Gary Trent is he's just a great spot up shooter. So it's not like we're going to sit there and asking him to run around a ton of screens or anything, because ironically, he wasn't necessarily that amazing running around screens and such, but in terms of being just a pure spot up shooter, he was absolutely phenomenal with that. And that's a lot of what we asked Malik Beasley to do, just kind of just stand there and maybe occasionally we'll give you a play, but just kind of space the floor and just be ready at all times. And he was absolutely great for that for the Raptors. So overall, I think the Bucks have actually had a great offseason. We were really limited on what we can do. We could only sign vet min contracts. So not only that, we also got DeLon Wright, great defensive-minded vet. So and the best part too is I think there's room for us to really play these vets like DeLon Wright, Gary Trent, and also develop our young guys. Now, I will say that I am off the Marjan Beauchamp hype train. He's the same player he was 2 years ago when we drafted him, and that's concerning to me. He could be a fine 3-and-D wing. However, at the end of the day, I think it's just time to accept that there's nothing more there than that. I've watched him try to be the guy in summer league, and it's been absolutely brutal to watch. Anytime he's asked to create his own shot, it goes absolutely haywire. Now, I do think that we can maybe sneak some AJ Johnson minutes in there this year, but I also think that he's going to spend a lot more time in with the herd with our G League team, him and Tyler Smith. So I'm hoping to see a lot of them this year. It's going to be a lot of fun watching these young Bucks run. But let's talk about the other big news. Russell Westbrook has been traded from the Los Angeles Clippers. Well, he got traded to the Jazz. Jazz waived him again. Second time the Jazz have traded for Russ just to waive him right away. And now he's a Denver Nugget. And in return, the Clippers got Chris Dunn. I really don't know what the Clippers are doing at this point. Now, granted, it sounded like Russ wanted out anyway, and he was never part of their long term plan. So credit to them for getting somebody back in return. Chris Dunn, worst case scenario, he's always been an elite defender. He's really great at the point of attack and fighting around screens. His big flaw is sometimes he has issues spacing the floor. So that might be concerning later on down the road, but he was great for Utah. And now the part that everybody wants to talk about, though, Russell Westbrook is now on the Denver Nuggets. And let me just put it this way. If Russell Westbrook doesn't work out in Denver, then his career is just done at that point. There's nobody better suited to bring out the best in Russ than Jokic. This is going to be a motion offense where he's going to be asked to cut downhill, maybe set some screens. Kind of what I think they'll do with him is similar vein in what they did. He's like a more maniacal version of what they did with Bruce Brown. Obviously, the only trade-off is you're trading off three-point shootings for better rim pressure and rim finishing. So I do think that this could work very well as long as Russ is willing to accept his role and do the dirty work, and just be willing to be an off-ball player. If he's willing to play off the ball, then absolutely 10 out of 10. I think this could work great. Now, obviously, there's a version of this that doesn't work out great, but let's say even if it doesn't, Russell Westbrook's on a veteran minimum contract. It's not like he's some massive cap hit. The drawback to if Russ doesn't work out, though, is he's got to be a huge part of this rotation, especially with Holmes out. Reggie Jackson's gone. So the hope is that Russ can come in and just play a big role right away. So I'm hoping that at the end of the day, he's able to. And I think he will be able to. But if he will be able to or not, that just all depends on Russ. Is he ready to buy in? And I will say yes, because he did so with the Clippers, did so with the Lakers. They asked him to go to the bench, and they asked him to do things he didn't necessarily seem to like, but he did them anyway. So, yeah, overall, I'm excited for to see where this goes. It's going to be absolutely great to see it. And no, that was I thought there was a different comment, but also I wanted to talk about one of my own guys actually, and it's unfortunate that I have to do this, but Brandon Jennings decided that he wanted to talk about. He wanted to talk, and he's sitting there talking about Jalen Brunson and the Villanova Knicks. How ain't nobody scared of them because, well, let's face it, nobody cares about those college. Nobody cares about those college players. Did you win a ring in the NBA? Did you win in the NBA? That's all I care about. And once again, to me, that's just a bit much, especially coming from Brandon Jennings. He wants to talk about the Villanova new look New York Knicks not winning anything in the NBA. But as much as I hate to say, because that's my guy, Bucks and 6 all the way, what has Brandon Jennings won in the NBA in order to really be talking like that? Brandon Jennings has won one playoff series where he's averaging 3 points a game. His career was done when he won his one playoff series. And I respect what he did for us. He came in and he gave us some great, fun, entertaining years. Dropped 55 in his 7th game. Formed a fun backcourt with Monta Ellis, which, of course, the matchup with Miami in 2011 or 2012, sorry. And that's what spawned him being overconfident and saying that we're going to beat the Heat in 6, which unfortunately did not happen. But I just find it funny when someone like Brandon Jennings wants to use rings as a benchmark when something he never did, something he never even came close to doing. With Brandon Jennings being a prominent player on his own teams, never even made it out of the first round. So I'm really excited about the Villanova Knicks. Sorry, New York Knicks. It's so much more fun to call them the Villanova Knicks. I think my big question with them is I saw the report today. They were snooping around. Actually, they're trying to get Clint Capella and checking on his availability, and I think that's absolutely great because they need a center. I still don't believe in Mitchell Robinson's ability to stay healthy. This is a guy that's shown that he cannot stay healthy when you really need him to. So I think they need another center behind Mitchell Robinson. If they went out and got a guy like Clint Capella, where even if Mitchell Robinson goes to the bench, they can just replicate that same exact play style, then that would be awesome. And you're not relying on Julius Randle at the 5 minutes, which is honestly probably the biggest thing of them all. Ooh, a little bit of a sore throat there. But yeah, so I saw that report and I absolutely love it. And I think that's the right move. Go get more depth. Go build up that big man rotation because as of right now, I think that would be the Knicks' downfall if they got into a playoff series. Which, if Mitchell Robinson stays healthy, it's less of an issue. But even when he has to go to the bench, right now they just get absolutely hammered unless they really are convinced that Jericho Sims is ready for big playoff minutes. And as much as I'm sure New York fans would hype him up, I don't think he's ready. I don't know if he'll ever be ready. I think this is a team that's ready to win right now, and they should go get a player that's more ready to win right now. And now I wanted to do some fun. I wanted to do something really fun. So what I wanted to do today, and it's really simple. I want to start with the Southwest Division in the NBA, and I want to go through each team, and I'm going to guess playoff, play in, or lottery. So I guess we'll see where I have all these different teams ranked, and we'll start at the top. We'll start off the top. We'll start off with a really easy one: the Dallas Mavericks playoffs. I think they're still a top 6 seed, and I think that's a team that just got better, and a team that's got another year of chemistry between Luka and Kyrie. I think this is and not to mention, I think we're going to see a big second year leap from Derek Lively, and that's absolutely fantastic for him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the Dallas Mavericks this year, which wasn't something I was saying at the beginning of last year. And I think that this is a playoff team. Just went to the finals. Do I think they make it to the finals again? Not necessarily, but they very much so could be back. It's something that I'm excited to see and something I'm excited to watch as it transpires next year. I'll say, of course, they got the big addition. They won the offseason. They got Klay Thompson, which we can say a lot about Klay's defense. I think that's defense is going to be hard for them with Luka, Kyrie, and Klay. The offense will be great. Klay gives them something they desperately needed, and that's consistent floor spacing. Even with a diminished version of Klay Thompson, he was still shooting 38% from three. And I think that he's going to go back up to hitting around 41% from three playing with Luka. And that is elite numbers. So I think we're going to be looking at a top tier offense starting lineup. Kyrie, Luka, Klay, PJ Washington, Derek Lively. and that is easily good enough for a top 6 seed. So Dallas Mavericks in. Now this next team though, this one, oh my goodness, this next one's tough. I'm going to go with the second place team in the Southwest Division, the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, let's start off by saying this. I like them adding DeJounte Murray. I think they got better by adding DeJounte Murray. However, they lost Jonas Valanciunas, and I think that's huge because I don't think they ever fully replaced Jonas Valanciunas. They drafted Missy in the NBA draft this year, and that's their projected starter, a rookie who we don't even know if he's ready to see the court. I think that this team is interesting, and I think that this team is a play-in team. Now, that whole play-in team, Jonas went to the Wizards. They gave him a 3-year, $30 million deal. So, on one hand, I feel like that's an overpay for what Jonas Valanciunas is right now. But at the same time, it's also somebody the Pelicans really couldn't afford to lose without a backup plan. So I think with a healthy Zion, and that's the key to the whole thing, right? Can Zion Williamson stay healthy this year? I agree. That what $10 million a year, that's too much money for Jonas. But can Zion stay healthy this year? I think he'll stay healthy enough, and this team still has enough talent that this is a play-in team. And I don't think they'll be good enough though for a playoff team. But hey, if Zion stays just healthy for the full year, maybe I'm wrong. But I don't think I am. So Pelicans playing. Now this one is fun. The Houston Rockets, are they a playoff team, a play-in team, or are they a lottery team? Now, this is interesting to me. I love what they're trying to build. I love the Reed Shepherd pick. It's just looking better and better. I don't think they're a play-in team yet. I think that's next year. I think they're coming. And I think that they have a nice foundation to where they'll end up being a really good, play-in team building towards a playoff team. I don't think they have that guy. I like Sengun. I think he's a great offensive hub. I think Jabari Smith is, slowly improving his game. Fred VanVleet played much better than I thought he would. Reed Shepherd, he looked amazing during Summer League. Now, what I'm seeing, though, when I look at this collection of talent, is a bunch of really good high-end role players. I don't think they have a true number one option to really tie it all together yet. And I think that's going to hurt them. Now, the one guy I will give you, I think Sengun is a perfect number one playmaker on offense. Cam Whitmore, though, I think Cam Whitmore might have potential to really develop to be a number one. But the issue, too, with trying to build around Sengun is his defense is atrocious. So that's also something that they have to figure out. When you're trying to build around a guy like Sengun or Jokic, Sabonis, guys who are really great offensive hubs, but really terrible defenders, you just kind of got to stack defense around them. Aaron Gordon for Jokic has been perfect. The best team they ever had, or their title-winning team, they stacked defense with Brown, KCP, Jamal Murray. And I don't think there's a perfect balance. I don't think they've struck that perfect balance of giving Sengun enough defense to completely shield him. So I don't think this is a playoff team. I don't think this is a play-in team yet. But I think they will run it right till the end. I could see them being in that little play-in mix until like the last 2 weeks and then falling out. And they will also have a chance at the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, which if this team ends up with Cooper Flag Or as I started looking at some film of his, if they end up with like Cooper Flag or as Gene, shout out, Mr. Wire to Wire himself pointed out last week, if they end up with him or Dylan Harper, my goodness, well, that would be your number one option on offense that can really carry a team. I would be sold on both of them going to Houston, and I'd be sold on Houston. And I'm looking forward to seeing them this year. I think they'll be a very exciting team to watch. However, this is one of the reasons why I think they might miss the playoffs is because there's a team in their division that just got better, I think. And they added a center in the draft. It's the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, their biggest addition is going to be simply a healthy Ja Morant. We haven't seen Ja Morant on a basketball court in 2 years almost, but he's back, and we're going to see him this year. And Zach Edey, his new Steven Adams replacement, which I find weird that Zach Edey has already suffered more injuries in the NBA in Summer League than he did all of his college career. What are the odds of that? I think that this is straight up going to be a playoff team. I know that's asking an awful lot of Ja Morant to come back and kind of jump back into Ja Morant form right away. But I think the pieces are there. I think a starting lineup with Ja, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey. I think that's going to be one of the best starting fives in the league this year. Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's something that Edey's kind of getting used to is just the more physicality. And maybe that's why he's just kind of getting used to it. And maybe that's why he's getting hurt a little more. But I think they're going to put him at starting center. I think Jaren Jackson at the 4. And I think they're going to be right back where they left off, where they're a top 6 seed in the playoffs. I think that Desmond Bain showed that he's slightly outcasted as a number 1 option, but he's a perfect number 2. He's like a high-end 2 that can play a number 1 option against some really bad teams. And I think Ja Morant coming back is going to bring back the best version of Desmond Bain possible. So I am looking forward to that for sure. I think it's going to be a great lineup to watch. And of course, Marcus Smart. This is a guy who also suffered from injuries. But when he's healthy, Marcus Smart has been arguably one of the best guard defenders of the 2020s. Him, Drew Holiday, Alex Caruso. Like, these are just some elite defenders, and you can argue that Marcus Smart has been the best guard defender in the league since, the start of the new decade here. So I think they'll have a perfect balance of offense and defense, and they will be right back in the playoff hunt. And this last team was also very interesting to me. Ladies and gentlemen, the San Antonio Spurs. Now, they obviously got Stephon Castle this year in the draft. They added Chris Paul in free agency. However, the biggest thing to happen to them, they're going to have year 2 Wemby. Now, when it comes to Chris Paul, I think the best thing that he did for himself was come to San Antonio. Chris Paul clearly isn't a guy that wants to ride the bench and, get himself a Tracy McGrady attempt at a ring or a Robert Parrish in 97 where he's just buried at the end of a bench, not contributing. He wants to play ball. This is a man that just loves the game of basketball. And he had offers from actual contenders, but he said, I want to play. So he's going to go down to San Antonio, help mentor the young guys. And I think this is going to be a great learning experience for Castle. Not to mention, Chris Paul, even in limited minutes, is going to get an insane amount of assists just from playing with Wemby. He's going to be looking for Wemby. He's going to be looking for those lobs. I'm sure anybody watching the Spurs last year, you guys know, how many times did you watch Jeremy Shohan and company and just Trey Jones just somehow completely miss Wemby? He's 7'3", standing in the paint, nobody around him, and they just would completely miss him. I think Chris Paul will obviously be much better at that. He's not going to miss Wemby. And I think that's the perfect guy for Castle to also learn to play with a more pass-first mentality. So overall, I love what the Spurs did this offseason. Now, do I think that the Spurs are a play-in team? Not yet. I think that required just too many jumps, right? I think Wemby makes a big leap again, and maybe that's enough. But I think the issue is more so guys like Castle won't be ready. I don't think, Shohan's ready. Is Keldon Johnson ready? Is Vassell ready? I think they have intriguing pieces, and I think Wemby will be ready, and he'll make a big jump next year. But I don't think this rest of the supporting cast is really going to follow along with Wemby and being ready to make a jump to go to the play-in tournament, which I hope I'm wrong. The more Wemby we get, the better. He's a generational talent. Lived every second up to the billing last year. So overall, definitely I have the Spurs missing the playoffs this year, but I think next year's their year. I think next year, when we get a second-year Castle and another year with these young guys developing with the same core and they get more chemistry, I think that's when we finally get to see Wemby start playing in the play-in games. So overall, to kind of just recap, Dallas playoff team, Pelicans play-in team, Rockets missing the playoff, Memphis playoff team, Spurs missing the playoffs. And, maybe I could go back down and look at these teams and, change that up later. It's possible. Maybe there's teams I'm not thinking about or go, yeah, you know what? Never mind. You're not a playoff team anymore. But overall, that's just kind of like my high-end evaluation of each of those teams where I think they could end up. And Memphis before, Steven Adams went down and Ja went down, they were one of the best teams in the West. And I think that they're going to come back and they're going to do that again. So overall, I just wanted to come on and talk some hoops today. A little bit of a shorter episode. My boy Mo's not here. Hopefully he'll be back next week. So thank you all for listening and tuning in and hanging out with me as we talk ball together. Like I said, please tune in next week. Hopefully Mo will be back. I'm gonna, sign off for now. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you for tuning in to the And One podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And One? Find it on Wire to Wire. Like and share our Facebook page and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.